health, life, love, and enlightenment. These are not four separate things. These are really all one. The wisdom of enlightenment is that there is no separation anywhere in the world, that you are not a separate being, alone and separate from all the rest of existence. No, there is no separation. There is only this totality, this myriad of things and experiences and beings are all one. And this is a wonderful realization, a wonderful realization. It puts everything into perspective, everything into this great, enormous peace and unconditional love. The realization of this non-separation. To even call it oneness is a way of making a concept about what this is. So it's better to call it non-separation. Separation doesn't exist. There is no separation anywhere. And recently I've been listening to a doctor, Zach Bush, a very, very brilliant doctor and very awake and very filled with love and compassion and a strong desire to educate people, educate the world. As a doctor, he sees the causes of this rampant growth of chronic disease in the United States and growing into the rest of the world as well, but particularly in the United States. This is the chronic illness is a sign, is a message that we're not paying attention to. Everything in life is teaching us all the time. Everything in life is teaching us all the time. And one of the things that I learned from Zach Bush, which I didn't realize before, is as his study of the microbiome, the bacteria that are the source of life, really, on this planet, you know, and for instance, when you eat food, you think you're eating food and it's feeding your cells, but it's not actually feeding your cells. It's feeding bacteria in your gut lining. That's what it's feeding. It's feeding the bacteria in your gut lining, and the bacteria in your gut lining are then feeding your cells. It fits into this whole non-separation, this whole feeling of oneness, that this bacteria is not only feeding your cells, but it's taking care of you. It's your immune system. It's purifying you and healing you. So everything, and this bacteria is inside and outside. It's very important for life, critical for life. It's the nature of life and health. So this is part of understanding health, life, love, and enlightenment. This bacteria and you are one. Right? The bacteria and you are one. And to understand that is a great feeling of love. This bacteria, something that you feel is not you, is loving you, is healing you, is taking care of you. It's a beautiful thing. There's bacteria in the soil that's helping the plants grow and be healthy. So this is health, life, love, enlightenment. Health, life, love, and enlightenment. It's all one. It's all the same thing. But if we're ignorant of this, if we don't understand this, if we're conditioned to believe something else, like that we're separate beings, separate from everything else, and that the world is a dangerous place, the world is, there's just me, and I need to find my way in this world that is against me, this world that I have to overcome, that I have to conquer. You know, this ego-driven idea and concept that we have, and we particularly have this very strongly in the United States, this very strong desire that it's me against others, me against the world. I need to compete and thrive and overcome obstacles and be number one. You know, this is not health, life, love, and enlightenment at all. In fact, it's the opposite of that. It's a culture of death, a culture of ignorance, a culture of suffering, and a culture of disease. And we can see the results of this message, we can see the results of this in the United States, in the health of the people in the United States. In 2018, 125 million Americans, 50% of the population, suffer from debilitating chronic illness. 50% of the population of the adult Americans suffer from debilitating chronic disease. Cancer, heart disease, asthma, arthritis, chronic pain, obesity, depression, all kinds of chronic disease, chronic illness. 50% of the adult population. And the CDC, this comes from the Center for Disease Control, and the CDC and many other scientists verify this as well, that in 2020, 157 million adult Americans suffer from debilitating chronic illness, at least one, and usually more than one. That's a 25% increase in 2 years. And this has been steadily going up. When they expect it won't be 50%, but it will be 80% soon. So this is clearly something to pay attention to, isn't it? How can we ignore this? This is something that we really need to understand. We really need to let this message sink in, that life is giving us, that love is giving us, that health is giving us, that enlightenment is giving us, that the world is giving us. Why is the United States the most unhealthy country in the world? Right? It's pretty clear if we look at this. United States, the rest of the world. How come, why is the health so bad in the United States? We're supposed to have this great healthcare system. Why is it the worst here than it is any other place? Places that have no healthcare system. Why is it worse here? And why is it getting increasingly worse? 80% of the older adults have at least one, and usually more, debilitating chronic illness. Perhaps this is why so many people, more people in the US die of the COVID-19 coronavirus than any place else in the world. Because of underlying conditions, underlying chronic health issues. And what's really sad is it's sad enough that 50% of the population and more suffer from these debilitating chronic illnesses. But now children are suffering from these chronic illnesses. When I taught 4th grade for a year it was amazing. I mean, there were almost half the class had asthma inhalers. And many of these children, you know, wanted to be professional athletes. But you can't do that if you have asthma, you know. They would get winded and have to use this just running across a playground. Almost the entire class had some allergy to some nut or something like that. So eating food with other children was a big problem. They had to teach us how to use these things called an EpiPen, which we would have to, basically it's like a little syringe thing we have to stick into the child's body if they're suffering from, they can't breathe from an allergy, from one of these allergies. It's so common that all teachers are given this instruction in an EpiPen in order to do this. Kind of frightening. But I'm 71 years old, so when I was 10 years old, that's like 60 years ago, nobody in my class had asthma. Nobody in my class had autism. Nobody in my class, you know, suffered from diabetes or any of these illnesses. Not a single child. It was unheard of. It was not something that we would even thought of. But now, so many do, so many children. And I was thinking about, you know, people that are saying, well, this incredible rise in autism in children, that it must come from a vaccine. So there's people that are anti-vaccine, and they think it must come from a vaccine, but it's much worse than that. It comes from the food that you feed your children, the food that you give your child. That's what's causing the autism. That's what's causing the asthma. That's what's causing the depression. And that's what's causing them to grow up with cancer and heart disease and all these other debilitating chronic illnesses. It's the food. Because in the US, it's a culture of death, a culture of killing. And one of the things that we've done is we've used this chemical called Roundup, that Monsanto has created. Monsanto is owned by pharmaceutical companies, and it's patented as an antibiotic, something that will kill bacteria, right? Including the bacteria in your gut, which is responsible for your health. So when the doctor gives you an antibiotic, it kills the thing that's responsible for your health. It kills some other bacteria too, but it also kills the, quote, good bacteria, which are responsible for your health. And this Roundup is sprayed on all the crops and goes into the soil and kills the bacteria in the soil, meaning that you have crops that are not healthy, right? Genetically modified crops, they genetically modify it so it's Roundup ready, so it can withstand this heavy poison that they're using to poison the weeds and insects. And we feed this to our children, and we eat this ourselves. And this is causing this widespread chronic illness in this country. In Europe, they've banned Roundup, and they banned these genetically modified crops. So there's healthy food there. They did this to protect their citizens and their farmers. But in the US, we don't do that. In the US, we actually have federal laws that say that towns, states, towns, cities, communities cannot ban Roundup from being used. There's a federal law against banning Roundup the way they do in Europe and many other places in the world now, because they know the damage that it causes to their population and the farmers. So they banned it in Europe, but it's still used in the United States. And it's creating massive health problems in the United States. Yeah. Yeah, Lori, it's very connected. But when the anti-vaccine people are, focusing on this one thing, and they're distracted from looking at the big picture, which shows you what the real problem is. It's a much deeper thing. It's our whole way of farming. It's our whole way of food supply. And it's understandable that we don't know about this. I mean, Zach Bush is on YouTube now, but he's not on mainstream media, and he wishes he were. He wants this message to get out, but it's not going to happen in this country, right? It's going to be limited to YouTube and the few people that see it. And the people that do see it are, well, I loved it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, because this is an amazing man. He's intelligent. He's done all this research. He has a whole team of people doing research on this. He's been doing this for years. He's a doctor. He's specialized in cancer. And cancer is an incredible message, and a wonderful, just ingenious, brilliant message that life gives us. I mean, it is so absolutely perfect. It just is mind-boggling to me. I had cancer 20 years ago, and went through a whole medical system with it, which is why I don't use Western medicine at all for the past 20 years, because of my experience with it. And it was, when I first discovered that I had it, there was blood in my urine. It was cancer in my bladder. There was blood in my urine. And, I went to the doctors, like, okay, is this a problem? I don't know why this is happening. It's never happened before. And they said, well, you have to have this very intrusive test. And I said, no, thank you. That's not for me. But I remembered when my daughter was born that there was an ultrasound, and you could look at the baby in the mother's womb, in my wife's womb, and you could see the baby in there. And we thought that was pretty cool. And hopefully it was harmless, right? Because there's a fetus in there, and also the mother, a pregnant mother, you don't want anything to happen to them. So it seemed like that was pretty safe. So I said, okay, I'll have that done. And then they can look in a mother's womb. They can certainly look in my bladder. And sure enough, you can do that. So they were looking around in there. The woman who was doing it was new to it, and but still, she knew what she was doing. She could do it, and there was nothing, and then suddenly there was this amazing thing that looked like a vegetable from another planet. It had this stalk growing up like a tree, and then out of the stalk there were branches going out, and then at the end of the branches there were things that almost looked like flowers. So there was this stalk going up, and I was just amazed. I wasn't frightened at all. I was amazed. I was just fascinated with it. It was like I was looking at a plant from Mars, a plant I'd never seen before, and it was growing inside my bladder. And for some reason, I was just thrilled with this. I was just overjoyed that this would be growing in me, this beautiful thing. So that was my experience, but it wasn't the experience of this nurse, and it wasn't the experience of the doctor. She ran out of the room, and 3 doctors came in, and they looked, and they said, this is cancer. You need to do something about this immediately. And they were all upset about it, but I wasn't. I just thought this was something, the picture in my mind was so beautiful. I can still picture it now. It's just an amazingly beautiful thing. Life, right? Life. Something growing, life, love, health. So although it's not that healthy, cancer is cells that have, cancer is cells that feel like they're the only cell in existence. They've lost their connection with the body. They've lost their connection with the other cells. They feel like they alone are the most important cells. They're ego cells, basically. They're cells that have become like the human ego. They feel that there's just me and the world is something dangerous, and I'm here. So what can a cell like that do? Well, it replicates like crazy, right? It doesn't understand its connection anymore to the rest of the body. So that's its illness, that's its disease. And for me, my experience of that was like, well, what did I do to cause this illness to my cells? What did I do to do this, right? This is a natural, obvious thing that we would ask, but the doctors didn't care. You know, they had no concern with that at all. They said, no, you need to go in and we're going to have surgery and we're going to remove it. We're going to cut it out. And then we're going to, you know, do other things and medications and practices and stuff like that, which I didn't want to do. And for very good reasons. I didn't know at the time that it was already in remission, but it was. And so the doctor who looked at it wanted to very quickly have a surgery, right, before it completed its remission, and there wouldn't be any need for surgery before. Because if you're a doctor and your focus is on cancer and operations, this is how you make your living. This is how you pay your medical, school bills and your country club and everything else. You need this money from surgeries. So remission is a very bad thing to a doctor that does this. This is like the worst thing that could happen to you, is for cancer to go into remission. It's the healthiest thing that could happen to the patients, but it's the worst thing that could happen to you. So they kind of hustled me into having surgery, and even though I didn't want to do it, there was, all my family said, yes, so many people are sick, right? I was like 50 years old, and at that time, many people had had surgeries. Already this growth in chronic illness was happening. This growth in cancer, this growth in heart disease was already happening in the United States. And so I was one of the people that had it. And for sure, I mean, if I really sat with the cancer and learned from the cancer, it would show me all the things that I had been doing wrong. The food that I'd been eating, the food that I'd been feeding my children. I didn't know, I mean, I was innocent of that. I didn't know that this food that I was eating was going to cause cancer. I didn't know that, drinking coffee or alcohol was going to lead to cancer. I didn't know, any of this. My daughter had problems, emotional problems, depression and stuff. And, I'd taken her to McDonald's, probably like 2 or 3 times a week, because to get a Happy Meal, this is something she really wanted. And so I'd done this through most of her life. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better, just like you. We don't know any better. So this is, with people like Zach Bush, he's hoping that we'll learn. Because if we don't know any better, we just keep on doing this. We keep eating in restaurants. We keep eating food that's, genetically modified and sprayed with Roundup. And we take antibiotics when the doctor gives it to us, which is very frequent. We don't realize that this is killing us, that this is killing our health. And the doctors don't realize it either. They don't want to. Their income depends on it. So we live in a very toxic culture, because it's a culture of death. It's a culture of killing. It's a culture of killing bacteria. It's a culture of killing insects. It's a culture of killing, basically, right? It's a culture of killing. A culture of destruction, a culture of killing weeds. People spray Roundup on their lawns to kill weeds. And then their dog goes out and plays on the lawn. And then they wonder why their dog is sick. And their children go out and play on the lawn. They wonder why their children are sick. And this Roundup is washed into the rivers. And it comes in measured in rain now. Even in the air that we breathe, where Roundup is used heavily. It's even in the air. So this environment that we live in the United States is very toxic. You know, if I understood better what it was, I wouldn't have moved my daughter from school to try and find a way to make her less depressed and happy. I wouldn't have taken her to doctors and psychiatrists to get drugs to help her. I wouldn't have done any of that because none of that works. That just makes things worse. What I would have done is I would have moved to Europe, where I could actually get her food, or started a garden and grown food myself. I would have done what needed to be done, but I didn't know any better. You know, just like you, I didn't know any better. So although there is like a tinge of guilt, I think the people that are focusing on vaccines as being the cause of the problem don't want to accept that it's food. Because what do? I mean, you get a vaccine for your child like once a year, you know, maybe once or twice a year, I don't know. But you feed them every day. You feed them every day. And if what you're feeding them is the cause of their autism, asthma, depression, all the different things that are so chronic in children today, even suicide, then that's a burden on you, right? But it's not because you didn't know, right? I didn't know that taking my daughter to McDonald's, I was doing it because I loved her, you know, and she wanted to go, and a Happy Meal, what could happen? I was eating the food too. And when I was 50, I had cancer. And I didn't know. I didn't know. If I knew, I wouldn't have done that. But I didn't know. Nobody knows. Why are more than 50% of adult Americans suffering from chronic illness? Because they don't know. They take it on faith that the food must be okay, it must be healthy, that Roundup must be okay. The government's telling them it's okay. The doctors aren't saying, have you eaten any food that's genetically modified and is not organic, certified organic, or that you're not growing yourself? That's not a question that doctors ask you. So in this country, we have a massive medical system, medical industry. And because of all this chronic illness, we spend more money on chronic health problems than we do on anything else. War, you know, our limited social safety net, everything. Trillions of dollars a year we spend on treating, on managing chronic illness. And that keeps growing, eventually to the point that it's going to bankrupt the whole country. And still we're not doing anything about it, right? We're trying to say like a new medication will solve the problem, but a new medication won't solve the problem. A new medication is just going to treat a symptom. It's not going to treat the cause. It's not going to treat the cause. Every time we go out to eat at a restaurant, we're poisoning ourselves, slowly poisoning ourselves. Not just McDonald's, even a five-star restaurant is the same. But we can change all this. If we understand what's going on, we can change it. We might not be able to do this at McDonald's, but we can go to a restaurant. We could even do it at McDonald's. We could write to, you know, the board of McDonald's or whoever we can, or tell the individual manager of the state that if you can't give me organic food, particularly food that comes from local farms, you know, that's certified organic, where no Roundup is sprayed, where it's not genetically modified, I can't eat at your store anymore. I can't eat at your restaurant anymore. We can do this with restaurants. And eventually, if enough people do this, the restaurant will have to change. They will have to source their food at local farms and make sure that it's not genetically modified, and there's no Roundup sprayed on it. There's no poisons and toxins sprayed on it. Because the truth is, this system cannot last without us. That's the good news. The good news is that we're as responsible for this system of death and disease as the companies that are selling it to us. If we don't buy it, they can't sell it. That's the end of their business. And that doesn't take the government to do that, because the government's not doing that. They're being paid by, now Bayer owns Monsanto, they're being paid by Bayer through lobbyists to make sure that that the laws say that you cannot ban Roundup, that Roundup has to be sprayed and there's nothing you can do. It's sprayed on parks, it's sprayed everywhere. It's now called Liberty. They changed the name because more people are starting to discover it. So the tricky thing they do is they change the name of it. So it's no longer called Roundup. Now it's called Liberty. You know, it has this nice sound. Oh, freedom. Freedom to spray and poison people. Yeah. But we can educate ourselves and understand what's going on and be healthy. Support life. Love, and the wisdom of enlightenment. We can do this. We don't have to support a culture of death and disease. Yes, the United States is a culture of death and disease now, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, it's unnatural. As long as we support it, it will stay like this. When we stop supporting it, it will stop. It will have to stop. If we no longer buy food that's been genetically modified, sprayed with poisons, we no longer take antibiotics. You know, if you eat meat or dairy, this is also filled with antibiotics because the animals are kept in such unhealthy, unnatural, horrendous conditions that they couldn't survive without being pumped full of antibiotics because they're sick. You know, it's very unhealthy conditions, so they pump the animals full of antibiotics, and guess what? When you eat that meat, you're eating antibiotics. It's not an organic thing, it's a poison, it's a toxic poison. It doesn't die. Poisons don't die when the animal dies. And they find this chemical, Roundup, this toxic chemical in women's breast tissue. You know, it's in the very tissue of your body, causing these incredible illnesses. It's destroying your gut immune system, your ability to absorb food. And this leads to obesity because obese people are literally starved for food. They're starved, they're hugely fat, but they're starved for actual nutrition. They're not getting any nutrition because their gut, the bacteria, the healthy bacteria in their gut is dead, or most of it is dead. So it just can't absorb the nutrition because we're feeding the healthy bacteria in our gut. When that's not there, we can't absorb nutrition. And so we just keep eating more and more and more in order to try and do that, but we can't. So you would think that people that were obese would have a lot of nutrition, but they don't. They have less nutrition than anybody else. That's why they're constantly trying to eat to get this nutrition. It's a very sad state of affairs. But enlightenment doesn't turn away from reality. It doesn't turn away from what things are, the way things are. It sees what's going on. It sees the big picture. And when we see the big picture, we can make a change in our own life, in our own lifestyle, a change for health, for life, for love, for enlightenment, for awareness, we can make this change. If the change is going to happen in this country and in the world, it's up to us to make that change happen. We can't depend on anybody else to do it. We need to do it. We need to educate ourselves and live in a way that supports health, life, love, enlightenment. Thich Nhat Hanh, who had been my primary spiritual teacher for 40 years, and still is really, but so are many other teachers, but he was my primary and first real teacher. And one of the main precepts in Buddhism and Zen is not killing, right? This is the first precept, not killing. It's in every wisdom tradition, not killing. And, you know, it's interesting, even in Christianity, not killing, thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill humans. And that's what we try and interpret as, oh, I've never killed a human, I'm good. It means not taking any life. Not taking any life. Not taking the life of a bacteria or a virus. Anything. Or a cancer cell. Not taking life. Or a mosquito. Not taking life. Not killing. And so this is the direction that we're guided to, but in his very intelligent way, Thai, we called him Thai, Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai means teacher, said, you know, you go in the direction of this, like going in the direction of the moon, but it's impossible to get there. Because when you boil water to make tea, you're killing millions of microorganisms. You don't know you're doing it, but you should be aware that you are. So we're always killing, but we go in the direction of not killing, right? We can see a mosquito and we can choose not to swat it, just to brush it away, right? Or go inside, or wear a shirt, you know, so they don't bite you, but don't kill it. You know, if there are ants in your kitchen, don't kill them. If you don't call in a pest exterminator to exterminate them, that's not going in the direction of life. So in every way, with every creature, realize that you're one with them. The mosquito, the microorganism, the bacteria, the virus. You're one with all of it. It's a different way of living, the enlightened way of living, that you're not separate from anything. So when you understand you're not separate from anything, you don't kill. You don't intentionally kill. And if you do by accident, you know, I have these little tiny ants that come in the summer, and sometimes they're in my bathroom. I guess they go for water, and you know, they're very, very small. So if I'm cleaning the counter in the bathroom or the kitchen with a sponge, and one of them is there, that's it. They're dead. You know, it's like, you know, I'm not trying to do it, but they're very fragile. They're very small and they're very fragile. It's very easy to kill them. So I have to be very careful about that. And if I do kill them, you know, I know that I've done that. I accept that. I know that I've done that, and I accept that. And I feel compassion and love for myself and for the ant. That, you know, oh, that's not something that I do. I don't kill. I don't take life. You know, but accidentally I did. And so I own that. Right? So this is the way of health. This is the way of life. This is the way of love. This is the way of the wisdom of enlightenment. And if you go towards this, you know, maybe you eat meat and you decide, I'm going to only eat meat like once a week, you know, or every other day or something. I'm going to cut down on meat. And maybe I'm going to try and find meat that is, you know, like where there's no antibiotics injected in it. and where the animals are left to eat outside, where they're left to roam outside. Here in Arizona, in Sedona, the cattle are allowed to just range free. They just live their lives as wild animals, and then at some point they go and collect some of them and I guess kill them, But before they're killed, at least their life is okay. They're not like stuck into a pen as these factory farms are, injected with hormones to fatten them up, and they're not that fat. I've seen them out in the trails, out in the desert, and that's a healthier way to live. So if you go from I'm only going to eat meat that I know is raised in that way, you're going in that direction, the direction of health and life and love. And if you decide not to eat meat at all, you're going even more in that direction. So it doesn't have to be. You can go in the direction. You can keep moving in that direction. You can keep moving in a direction of health, life, love, and enlightenment. And if you're doing that, your life will feel better. You will feel better. You will be healthier, but you'll be healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You'll feel all of this. It's like you stop eating meat and you feel better. Something just feels better, lighter in you. You stop eating chemically modified foods and antibiotics, you feel better. You just feel better. Every cell in your body knows that you're going in this direction of health, and you're happier. What you do is connected to everything else in the universe. Your actions are your only companions, as the fifth of the five remembrance says. Your actions are your only companions. This is the ground upon which you stand. And you can change your actions, even just a little, bit by bit. And then notice how you feel. Notice how you feel when you go in this direction of health, life, love, and the wisdom of enlightenment. Before you're enlightened, this is why we have precepts. Precepts in every spiritual tradition has precepts, guidance. Christianity, thou shalt not kill. In Buddhism, don't kill. Every spiritual tradition has these primary things. Don't steal, don't lie, but don't kill is a primary guidance. So whatever happened in our culture, one of the problems with our culture, why there's so much conflict in this country, why there's so much, disagreement and divisiveness and disease and chronic disease in our adults and children, is because we're not honoring do not kill. In fact, we're going full force into killing. Our very healthcare system is based on killing. It's not based on health. It's based on killing. It's based on killing disease, cutting parts of the body out that have a disease in them. This is only treating a symptom. It's never looking at the cause of the illness. And so when we treat cancer, cancer comes back, right? If somebody hasn't had cancer and then has not had cancer for 20 years like me, that's a miracle, right? That only happens when somebody changes their lifestyle. It only happens when somebody changes their lifestyle. It has nothing to do with surgery or chemo or any of the other things that they do. If all you do is chemo and you go on with your same lifestyle that gave you the cancer, that's poisoning your body so that you have cancer, you're just going to get it again. No matter what you do, you're just going to keep getting it. This is the normal trajectory of cancer. They say, if you're free of cancer for 5 years, that's it. That's like the greatest thing that could ever be. If you could go 5 years without getting it again, that's the test of that we've succeeded in curing your cancer. You get it in the day after 5 years, it's okay. You know, we did it for 5 years. That's all we can do. But when you change your lifestyle, you don't get cancer again. At least not in 20 years, you know, more than 20 years now. You know, that's an action. And you change your lifestyle in what way? Towards health, life, love, and enlightenment. You know, all Buddhist monks and nuns live on a strictly vegetarian diet. They don't imbibe in intoxicants. They don't drink alcohol. They don't eat meat. They don't eat dairy. They don't eat eggs. You know, this is going in a direction of health, life, love, and enlightenment. Not all Buddhist monks and nuns are enlightened, of course. Not many are. Not many people are. But still, they're following the precept to go in that direction. And that makes their life happier, more peaceful, more loving, wiser. And you can do this too. Thank you, my friend. Many blessings and much love to you.